Hi, I'm Robert Fishkind, and I'm the Director of Financial Aid Services here at SMU, and I'm here with...
Hello, my name is Angie Ruiz. I'm the Director of Student Account Services at Southern Methodist University. We are here to talk about the process of financial aid, FAFSA, a student bill, and what that consists of.
Just all things student financial services. We're here to go through that whole process so y'all can see what it looks like.
The first thing I'd like to know is I am a first-year student at SMU.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'd like to know, how do I go about applying for financial aid?
The most common question. When it comes to applying for financial aid, it depends on a lot of things, right? It depends on citizenship status. It depends a little bit on state residency. So there are a few different applications that we look at when we're trying to determine how much financial aid a student will qualify for. We've got the FAFSA, right? The free application for federal student aid. That's our federal funds. So what do we think about when we think about federal funds, right? We have the Pell Grant. It's a pretty popular one. We have student loans, parent loans, which we'll talk about. But we got our federal aid programs. It's through the FAFSA. That's for our students that are U.S. citizens or what we call eligible non-citizens. So that's going to be people in statuses like permanent residency. So that's going to be our FAFSA. Then we have what's called the TASFA here in Texas, which is the Texas application for state financial aid. That's going to be for our students that aren't those designations. So when we think about students that are here under the DREAM Act, right, or Dreamers, that's going to be who the task was for, and that's to apply for some state grant programs. And then here as a private institution, we have a third application called the CSS profile. Now that is what helps us determine eligibility for institutional need-based programs.
And what do you mean by institutional?
Institutional. So there are three main pots of funding, right? There's your federal funds, there's your state funds, and then there are the funds that institutions make available to students. So very commonly, this is our academic scholarships, right? Our merit scholarships. With students as a first year, we're looking at your high school GPA, we're looking at how involved you are, what kind of organizations you were a part of, and determining what kind of merit scholarships you might be able to qualify for. And the money for those scholarships is coming from our institutional funds. But then we also have need-based funds. So funds set aside for our students that, based on the results of that profile, which is very similar to the FAFSA, maybe a few more questions, right? But we use the results of that to determine how much of that institutional money a student may qualify for, and we consider that along with federal eligibility and state eligibility. Now, one thing I will mention, when it comes to that FAFSA application and TASFA, right, so the federal application and the state, a student does not need to do both. They do one or the other. So again, if they're a citizen or a permanent resident, they do the FAFSA. And by doing the FAFSA, you get considered for federal and those state programs. But if you are not a citizen or not a permanent resident, then you do the TASFA, as long as you are a Texas resident.
Okay, so I will make sure to fill out my FAFSA and my CSSS profile.
That's right, so we can figure that out. Now, pop quiz, do you have to fill these applications out only one time or every year that you're in school?
I believe I have to fill them out annually.
Annually, that is correct, so that we can continue to determine what your eligibility will be.
So as a student, I have started filling out my FAFSA, but it asks me for a code. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so of course the FAFSA needs to know where to go. You know, it's a federal form, same thing with the profile. It may not be federal, but it's run by another organization, specifically the College Board. And so by filling out these forms, it's great, but they need to know, well, what schools, who needs this information. So we do have some codes that link directly to SMU. So there's a federal code for the FAFSA, and then there's a code that we have with the profile, and you can find those both on our webpage so that you know what to enter when you get to that section of the application. So it is something you will provide while you're filling the application out. And what I will say too is even if you don't have the code, there is a way to search for a school. Okay. So you can always search by state or search by exact name and find it that way.
And when I search, I'm searching for FAFSA code or what exactly?
You're searching the school. You know, the FAFSA, the way that it's set up is you can either do kind of a very big search. You can just go Texas, go. And it'll pull up every single university in Texas. If you do Dallas, Texas, then it'll pull up every college here in Dallas. Okay. Or you can search the exact name of the school. But if you have the code, you can always just pop the code in too, and it'll go directly to the right place. But you can do it either way. And the profile is the same. If you have the code, it'll just automatically, link it to the right school. or you can search and find SMU that way. And then we'll get it so we can move through our review process. Okay, so I have a question for you. So let's say I'm the first year student now, right? And I've gone through the financial aid process. I know what I'm getting. I know what I'm receiving. I look at my bill. What am I looking at? So when I get that invoice, what are some things I can expect?
So I want you to first off know when you're going to be getting a bill, because as a first year student, it's very overwhelming. You are bombarded with all kinds of emails and questions from our campus, which is all great information. But the bill, when do you get it? So you will do orientation in the summer, anywhere from June through August. Once you start orientation, you will begin your enrollment process. You meet with an advisor. And what happens is, as you enroll for classes, charges are accrued on your SMU account. You will get an invoice in July, and it will be due an estimate of about a month later, so in August.
Okay. So it's not due right away. I get that invoice. It's not like I have to make a payment right then and there, or I'm dropped.
You are not.
Okay.
You will not be dropped.
All right.
And so once an invoice is created, you will get an email notification that says your bill is ready to be viewed. You go into your pay portal, review it, and very important that if you are paying for your bill, you're okay. But if you have mom, dad, or grandma, anyone else paying for your bill, you set them up as authorized payers.
Authorized payers. Okay.
What's an authorized payer? What you're doing is giving them or allowing them access to your payment portal so that they can view the bill, so they can know exactly how much their portion is going to be. Let's say you are getting financial aid after you fill out your FAFSA. You've been awarded. So how do you know how much you're getting? How do you know what you're liable for?
Very important.
So what happens on the bill, you will have a list of all your charges. And what the bill consists of is your tuition, any mandatory fees, housing, and meal plan. Those charges will also, we will give you a total. Then we will see anything that you've been awarded for. So we call that anticipated aid.
Okay, so anything that I've accepted will show as anticipated. It's not going to look like it's so much on the bill as though it's been applied, but it's going to kind of be grouped together.
It's grouped together. Okay. It'll be labeled as anticipated aid. So it'll give you your total minus anticipated aid. This is what you're liable for.
Okay.
And so the bill also will show you our due date, how to pay, or a link on where to pay, or you are on the payment portal. So you'll be able to figure all of that out while on the SMU payment portal.
Okay, so it's all kind of laid out in that I'll see my charges, I'll see that anticipated aid, and then what that kind of resulting total, either if I'm covered with what I'm receiving or if there's a leftover amount that I'll be responsible for.
That's correct. And something also very important, as a first-year student, I know that you're not sure of what you're taking. Maybe you decide to add another class, or maybe when you do your initial enrollment, you only know of 3 classes. And then a month later, after you've been invoiced, you want to add another class. So what happens? Your charges increase. And a lot of times we forget to go back and look. So be mindful of what you're doing in your account, any activity. Look at your account for any changes. You will receive another bill at the end of the month. So we will always be in communication with you. So very important that you also keep up with your SMU email.
And all this information, when we're talking about financial aid, talking about the bill and where I can sell this, and that's all in my SMU website, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it's all just one nice place we can go to and see everything. When it comes to when we're looking at the bill and we see, okay, here's how much I'm being charged, here's how much I'm getting in that financial aid. If I'm looking at it and I see, okay, I have this amount that I have to pay, what are my options for paying that?
So we do have payment plans available for our students, trying to help a bit alleviate that cost. We have 2 payment plans. We have a 6-month payment plan. We have a 5-month payment plan. So whatever is easier for you and your family. When you sign up for a payment plan, it's term-based. So depending on whether you do a 6-month or 5-month, there is a enrollment fee depending on what payment plan you select. But all of this information, you'll be able to find it in our Student Financial's website.
Gotcha. It's a great resource, right?
Yes,
Student
absolutely.
Financial website. Got
our
your information and
place.
ours.
I go there all the time.
That's right. If I can put my financial aid hat, I'm going to take my student hat off for a second. Okay, put my financial aid hat back on. Because I want to add into addition to payment plans And that being an option for students that when we're looking at the financial aid a student can get, and as we experience quite a lot, we have that federal aid or maybe some state aid. What are some other options financial aid-wise, right, that a student could maybe pursue that we see? And we see private alternative loans. So what that would be is a loan through a lender of a student's choosing. We don't have any preferred arrangements. We don't recommend any lender over another. We just, guide students to make very informed decisions, that they know what the interest rates are on those private loans, because every lender is different, whether it's a variable rate or a fixed rate, what the repayment plan is. With federal loans, you don't start paying on those until 6 months after you either finish your program or drop below what we call halftime. Right, drop below 6 credit hours. Those loans, there's a pretty good amount of time before you have to start making payments, and then there are lots of different repayment options. We got the standard 10-year plan, but we also have plans that are based on a student's actual income, where they try to figure out a payment that should be able to fit within your budget as a student. So those are on the federal side. Private side, very different, right? Every lender's different. Every lender has different repayment plans. So it's just very important that if a student or a student's parent is pursuing a private loan going through one of these lenders, again, that they just pay very close attention to what those interest rates are. And of course, those repayment terms. But then we also have another federal option that we see a lot of people use, which is the PLUS loan, right? The parent loan. That's right. The parent loan for undergraduate students, if it's a dependent student. And there's also a PLUS option for grad students. The difference between a PLUS loan and regular student loans, so what you would get by filling out your FAFSA that would be, in your name if you're applying, is that student loans are not based on credit. It's if a student qualifies, if they haven't expended or used their full annual lifetime limit or yearly limit, they can get those student loans. No credit check involved. A PLUS loan, on the other hand, does involve credit. So if it's a parent, it's going to run on the parent's credit to see if they qualify. If it's a grad student, it's going to run on their credit to see if they qualify. But those amounts, and this is going to lead me into the next thing I wanted to ask you about, but those amounts can be as high as the overall cost of attendance that a student could be assigned. Another way to think of that is a student budget, right? It includes different components like tuition and fees, books and supplies, housing and food or meal plans. And then if a student is taking a federal loan, what those loan fees are, we include those in that budget as well. And that represents the maximum amount of aid that a student can get.
That's a lot of information.
It's a lot of information.
You just hand it over, so I can find all of this in your website.
That's correct. The Student Financial Services webpage, specifically under costs. You'll be able to see what our current year cost of attendance is there, as well as what that's made up of and what the different components are.
Okay. And I would just want to say that very important that even though we list cost of attendance in our website, keep in mind that these are estimates.
Absolutely.
That we can, we have to, again, be mindful of what's on our student account to be sure we have the right amounts. Whether we are to, apply for a loan, how much are we applying for? Know exactly what you owe. And also if you're setting up a payment plan, what is my total? By going to cost of attendance, it's just to give our students and parents an idea.
Absolutely.
But always be mindful of your student account.
Yes, as we like to say, the cost of attendance does not represent an agreement or a binding financial exchange. It is merely an estimate of what a student could potentially be looking to spend, both in what we call direct costs, so those costs paid directly to us here at SMU, and indirect costs, just what goes along with being a student. And those PLUS loans can cover the difference all the way up to what that cost of attendance number is. So we would look at things like, are you getting federal grants? Are you getting state grants? Do you have other loans? Do you have other programs, scholarships that you might be qualifying for? And then whatever amount is left, whatever's still remaining in that student budget that we haven't already offered aid for, that's what a parent loan or a graduate plus loan if it's a graduate student, or a private loan can cover, is that remaining amount, just to take a student kind of over their bill, what they need to cover the remainder of their bill.
Well, if I was a first-year student or a parent, I feel a lot more comfortable knowing that there are options and there are resources to help us out.
Absolutely. More often than not, there's always something we can point to. Sometimes we're not the ones in charge of it, such as with a private loan. But if a student or a parent is ever in a bind or they're not sure, how am I going to afford the rest of this or how am I going to pay for the rest of this, they just need to reach out to us. They need to review our webpage because we put, again, as we've been saying, so many resources out there to help guide students and their families
Absolutely.
towards those other options, those other resources that are out there that could help them bridge the gap. So I know we were talking before about how classes, whether you're adding and dropping, and how that can affect things. What is that period typically? So let's say and we're in our add drop period. I've decided, okay, I'm in 8 hours, but I want to go up to 12 hours. So I'm going to add a couple more classes. How immediate is it that I would be able to see the change in my bill?
So if you are withdrawing,
Okay.
there's a difference between just dropping a course or withdrawing for the semester.
Okay.
If you drop a course, if you do it by add drop date, no problem. It just depends when you drop or when you withdraw. There is a timeline. We do have a withdrawal calendar. So you will see if you drop a class, immediate changes on your charges. If you're withdrawing, it goes through several departments. It has to start through your school of record. It goes through, the registrar's office. And so there's a process. It could take up to 2 weeks for every department to come through this or complete the process. So charges are off of your account. So you'll see a credit if you made a payment. That doesn't mean you're going to get all of that back. It's just we're working through it. If you withdraw after, our add drop, you will be liable for a portion of those charges. It just depends when exactly it is that you drop.
And so when we're saying a portion of charges, are we talking about based on when I would be dropping a course? If I do still owe some percentage of that cost, that's what we're saying. I might still see that,
right?
Because of based on the day
Yes.
that I decided to drop,
right? And you won't see that prorated amount immediately again because that's a manual process. And but we keep you notified. If there's a balance after everything has been adjusted, we notify you and let you know and stay in contact with you.
Gotcha. I know we've discussed a little bit about payment deadlines. Is there kind of a set time where typically we start asking for payments? So whether we're talking about the fall semester, the spring semester, kind of when we typically start looking for payments to start coming in?
So for the fall semester, it starts late August. The term begins in late August. So I've mentioned before, we will send you an invoice for the fall semester in July, due in August. So August deadline comes, we do send a reminder to all of our enrolled students that payment due date is coming. For the spring semester, that would be in January. So you will be billed in December with a deadline of payment due date in January. It will always be before the first day of class.
Before the first day of class. Okay. And then summer, I'm assuming, I know summer's a little different because we have a lot of different terms starting at different times. And I know it can be very specific to a student's situation, their registration, but kind of generally speaking, how can a student expect to look at charges when it comes to the summer? Let's say I'm enrolled in, the first part of summer and the second. When I'm looking at my bill, does it include everything, all those terms?
So because summer is such a self-paced semester, enrollment begins in April.
Okay.
And you will receive a bill in May, and they will be due in May. So it's, again, a very short span. It works just like regular semesters. You will see charges as you enroll. I want to ask you for summer. Am I eligible for aid in the summer?
Loaded question. So summer can be tricky because it all depends on a student's specific situation. Very rarely is any one student the same when it comes to summer. What it really comes down to is how much aid was used during the fall and spring when it comes to federal aid. So if we're talking about the Pell Grant, if we're talking about federal loans, and if we're talking about parent loans, those plus loans or graduate plus loans, if it's a graduate student, all of that aid again comes down to how much was used during the year. So there is an annual limit. If that annual limit is used during the fall and spring, then we won't have anything left to award in the summer or to offer in the summer.
Got it.
The parent loans or the plus loans for grad students, those are a little more open-ended. Again, those can be as big as they need to be based on the cost of attendance.
So am I supposed to fill out a different form? Is there for summer, or how do I request for summer aid?
We do have a summer, good question. I should have started there. So yes, we do have a summer aid request form that is available on our webpage. If you go to the Student Financial Services website, there is a link that says Forms Library. If you click on that, it will be listed under there. It is an online form that you fill out and submit, comes to our office. It lets us know that you are planning to attend for summer. That is also where a student can tell us how many hours they're planning to take in summer. So we build that cost of attendance budget as close to what a student is actually expected to participate in. So we are ensuring the amount of aid is tied to the correct amount of time and the correct amount of hours. And so the parent loan or the plus loan, again, if it's a grad student, can be as large as that cost of attendance is. When it comes to state aid is for fall and spring. So we're not able to offer that for the summer. And then institutional aid, depending on what a student has, it's possible that it could be prorated for the summer semester. And again, how much it comes out to be all comes down to how many credit hours the student is enrolled in and how much time they're planning to attend.
Okay, and if a student does not qualify for any aid in the summer, just know that we do have a payment plan available for the summer. So you will find all the information on it and how we break it down and any enrollment fee also in our website.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, there's something you mentioned earlier that I want to jump back to just for a second. When we were talking about adding and dropping courses, we also talked about when a student withdraws.
So if you withdraw prior to the first day of class, you're not liable for charges, right? You're not expected to make a payment. It's after the first day of class when the clock starts ticking, and then we do have a calendar that based on the day that you drop that determines if you are liable for charges or a refund. Again, it just depends on the day of drop or withdrawal.
And on that note, same thing for us. So it's not just institutional charges that get affected, right? When it comes to the financial aid that's been received, we have to take a look at that too. So when it comes to federal aid specifically, so again, we're talking about the Pell Grant, we're talking about student loans, we're talking about parent loans, graduate plus loans, those kinds of programs, the government does require us to take a look at what a student received, how much time they attended in that semester, and whether or not they actually earned that federal aid that they got. When we are dispersing that, it disperses up front, right? Aid can disperse as early as 10 days before the start of a semester. So for instance, this fall started on August 26th, so aid could disperse as early as August 16th, so 10 days before.
10 days prior.
Right. So when we disperse, we're dispersing aid essentially all up front. So if a student gets a, let's say, $5,000 Pell Grant, $2,500 gets released for fall.
Oh, you
up to
split
that
it?
10 days. That's right.
You split it.
Yep, based on the number of semesters the student's planning to attend.
Okay.
So we have $2,500 that disperses up to 10 days before the start of the semester in the fall. Same thing occurs in the spring. So because we are, in a way, kind of front-loading, right? We're dispersing that money up front with the understanding that the student's attending this semester and they're going to complete this semester. So if at some point they do decide to withdraw, well, now what the government says is, well, we gave you this money with the understanding that you were going to attend the whole time. Now that you have not attended the whole time, we might need some of that money back.
Got it.
So there is a formula, very long formula, that the Department of Ed has mandated that we as institutions use and go through to determine how much time of the semester was attended, and using that percentage, in a sense, prorating the amount of federal aid that was received.
Okay.
It's kind of a simplified way to think of it, because otherwise we'd be talking for the next 3 hours about
I was going to say,
what it looks like. But again, there is information on our web pages about this. In those instances when a student withdraws, and we do have to look at that aid. More often than not, there is something we're going to have to send back. And because we're sending money back that we received to pay charges, that has the potential to create a balance that's now owed to SMU.
Got it.
So that's something that we always try to make sure students are aware of as well.
Right.
Not just how it affects their charges on the institutional side, but how can it affect their
No, as a student,
aid.
I think that we have to, before we make a decision like that, we have to, question how is this going to affect my already awarded aid or my charges? Am I going to be liable for anything once I decide not to be enrolled for the semester? So very important information that I think that we have to think about before making such a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And tell me something. So let's say, I've already been at SMU 2 semesters and the next year's coming up and my grades are not where they should be, or does that affect my financial aid in any way? Would that affect my upcoming year's aid?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And it is a process that we deal with a lot. So thinking about what we call satisfactory academic progress. You have to maintain a level of satisfactory academic progress. And this usually relies on 2 different measures. We have GPA, and then we also have completion. So course completion. If you're an undergraduate, it's got to be 2.0 or higher to maintain your eligibility for all aid programs. So this isn't just federal, it's state, it's also institutional. So we got to have that 2.0. If you're a grad student, things get very different. And the reason for that is some of our schools have different qualifications for what they consider to be satisfactory academic progress. And you might be asking yourself, well, how could schools do that if SAP is a requirement? And sorry, that's what we call it for short,
Right.
satisfactory academic progress. If SAP is a requirement and it's a federal requirement, how is it that it can be different? So there is this rule that when it comes to satisfactory academic progress, for financial aid purposes, we key off of what the academics wants to do.
Okay.
So the rule is we need to follow their requirements. So if the business school, for instance, says we want all students to maintain a 3.0 GPA, well, then satisfactory academic progress for business students becomes maintaining a 3.0 GPA. So with graduate students, I would just really suggest and recommend that they check with the grad school what are the requirements of their program, what GPA must they maintain to maintain good academic standing, and you can also check our website for that as well. We do post what the schools look for on our student financial services.
An undergrad student, it will always be above a 2.0.
Above a 2.0, that's correct.
Got it.
Now, the other side of it is that completion rate. So when a student registers for courses, they're saying, okay, these are the hours I'm going to be taking. So if they register for 12 hours, those 12 hours become attempted hours. Then by the end of the semester, we see how many of those hours a student completes. Did they successfully pass all 12 hours? Well, then they earn 12 of 12. Did they maybe drop a class? Drop 2 classes during the course of the semester, so they only completed 9 hours or 6 hours. We have to look at how many courses you're attempting, how many credit hours have you attempted to take versus how many credit hours have you actually completed.
So if I didn't complete my 12 hours that I enrolled for, is that affecting my aid?
It could. So that completion percentage has to be 75% or higher. So what that means is of the classes that you're taking, you need to be completing successfully at least 75% of those. And then what do we mean by successful completion? Earning a passing grade. We're not saying you have to maintain A's in every class, but you do have to earn a passing grade in those courses for them to be considered successfully completed. So any courses that you fail, again, any courses that you drop, if there's a semester that you were to withdraw, you've now got all these attempted hours with no hours being completed. And so eventually that percentage is most likely going to catch up to you. It may not be immediate that you drop below that 75%, but if you're continually dropping courses, failing courses, withdrawing from the program and then coming back, that's all going to affect that percentage. And eventually you're going to get cut off from financial aid because you're going to drop below that 75%. So it's very important to be enrolling in a number of classes that you know you can be successful in, right? We want our students to be full-time. We want you taking 12 hours at least, but also to be very realistic with yourself, of course. You don't want to sign up for so much that you don't perform well.
Right.
And in trying to do a good thing, trying to work ahead, you've now made it harder on yourself because you're not completing enough hours. Your GPA is slipping, and all that's eventually going to start to interfere with how much financial aid you can receive, or if you can receive financial aid at all. So again, we do look at these percentages, and should a student fall below them, we do require students appeal for their financial aid. They do go on what we call suspension, and they have to work with their academic advisor to map out a plan. The potential is whether or not we're going to approve it. That is decided by a committee in our office. If we do approve that appeal, then we will monitor your progress along with that plan from your academic advisor. And as long as the requirements are met, the plan is followed, you'll continue to receive your aid moving forward. Should we get off the track at any point, we'll be back in that position, potentially looking at suspension of that financial aid.
Let's say I filled out my FAFSA, my CSS profile, I'm awarded. I look at my award letter or my awarding and I feel like something is wrong, like it's not enough, or maybe something happened that changes my family situation. What happens? Can I appeal that? Can we fix that? Can I get you to review what you've already awarded?
Yeah, so this is where we get into kind of I like to think of it as inside baseball. It's an old reference to a show that is no longer on. But getting into the mechanics of how things work. When it comes to the FAFSA, when it comes to these situations, there's very little that we can do. The FAFSA is a Department of Education run form created by the government. What you have to put into that form is required by them. But we do have this little bit of flexibility that's called professional judgment, where we can meet with a student who's experiencing either what we call a special circumstance or an unusual circumstance. If a student's in one of those categories, they can meet with us, explain to us what's going on, and then potentially we can make changes to that FAFSA application to be more representative of the current situation. So again, kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that when students and parents are looking at their bill, how am I going to pay for this? I haven't received enough financial aid. Contact us, right? Review the website, see what other resources are there. This is very similar to that. I can't fill out my FAFSA. I don't have parent information, or I can't fill out my FAFSA. There's so much income that's going to be reported, and that's not what I'm earning anymore.
Right.
Why even do this? Still do it. And then contact the financial aid office.
Okay.
Ask us, what is it that I can do? Is there something we can do? Is there something we can explore? And we can absolutely have that conversation. If a student never presents that information to us, we never know. We don't have that opportunity to see what kind of help we can provide. Again, we can never guarantee anything more or anything additional, but we don't even have the opportunity to try.
Right.
Unless a student presents us with that information and lets us know what's going on. So we always want to be there for our students in those situations.
So Robert, as a student, I may need extra money or extra funding. Am I able to work on campus, or can you explain a little bit more of my options as a student to work on campus?
Absolutely. Working on campus is something that every student can do. We have a couple different kinds of jobs. There's just your normal student employment. Any student, you would just apply. And then there's federal work study.
Okay. And what's the difference?
Federal work study is another program,
Okay.
but it's very different from grants and loans. With work study, it's earned. So you may see an amount on your financial aid offer. It says you've been awarded $4,000 in work study, but you're not going to see that apply to your bill.
Okay.
That is a representation of how much money you could earn if you get a job on campus.
On campus as a student.
So as a
Right.
student. And so it is funding that's available to students that show financial need according to the FAFSA. And this is the FAFSA. So we're not talking about the profile when we're talking about this. We're talking about the FAFSA.
Right.
Based on the results of the FAFSA, if a student qualifies, we'll make them that offer. Should they get a job on campus, and it does have to be on campus, you can't go get any job. And of the money received, 75% of that money is coming from the federal work study funds that you've been offered. The other 25% is coming from the department. And one other thing to stress is if a student does not qualify for work study, that doesn't mean you can't work on campus. You can still apply for jobs. You can still try to work on campus. There are plenty of opportunities. Not every job requires work study. And for ones that do, they should clarify that for you so that you know before you go into it, okay, this is something I need. Now, if you're looking at your financial aid offer and you do not see a federal work study has been offered to you and you'd like to see if you could be eligible for it, what would be the best thing to do?
Go to our website.
Go to the website
and ask.
And then come in and ask us.
Robert.
That's right. After
Any of our advisors are
ask
awesome.
the financial aid team.
The
And
financial
yes, it might
aid
be
team
me.
is amazing.
Yes, and it might be me that you end up speaking with.
Let me ask you about as if I was an international student.
Okay, so we're changing this.
We're changing
your
work
student character a little bit. Okay.
So if I was an international student, how about any type of aid? Is an international student eligible for any type of aid?
So unfortunately, our international students are not eligible for aid that we can offer through either the federal government, the state, or institutional aid. The options that are really going to be available to us at that point are going to be utilizing those private or alternative loans. It's either going to be that or, as you mentioned, a payment plan.
Got it.
And when it comes to those private or alternative loans, there aren't as many lenders that will provide loans to international students, but they're out there. They are out there. There are ones that exist.
Is a list of these lenders provided in the financial aid website?
Yes. So we do have a page dedicated to both state and private loans. The state of Texas does offer a couple loan programs as well, one being the college access loan and another being what's called the forward loan. But again, want to stress, we're not recommending any lenders. We don't have any preference towards any lenders.
Just a resource.
We just try to help at least provide some information because we know it can be quite a process to undertake. When we're thinking about taxes, right, and there is a lot that I know financial aid gets involved with in taxes. Specifically, we talk about, student loans are always a topic of discussion and just in the discourse of our society.
Right.
And there is a statement that students will get every year called a 1098E that lists their student loan interest deduction. Is there something on the billing side as well that they would get?
It is the 1098-T. It's a tax document, an IRS document, and usually the student will probably have no interest, but the parent will need this documentation when filing their taxes. And so the 1098-T is produced or created once a year. It will be mailed out to the home address in January prior to the 31st. Once they receive this, if there's any questions on it, we do refer them to the IRS website because they do provide all answers. Usually, if there's any discrepancy, we will review it, and if needed, we create a 1098-T. That's usually not the case because it will consist of payments that have been made throughout that year, and what's on their account, it's what will be reflected on the 1098-T.
Is there anything else as far as financial aid that you feel like either hasn't been answered or that you would have a question about kind of here at the outset?
No, I think you've answered most of what we would have questions on as a student and a parent, but I know that we have provided a lot of information. Sure. It can be overwhelming, but I want to let our parents and students know that we're here to help. Our website is a great source. It has so much information. We are over in the Laura Lee Blanton building. We are across the hall from each other, so They can always come and visit with us. We have advisors that are there to help. It doesn't necessarily have to be you or I, but we are there too. So
yeah, we're here to help our students navigate this process, and parents navigate this process, try to make it as easy as possible. We make so much information available on the web pages. We do send frequent communications. So it's checking that SMU email address, it's checking that my.smu portal, and just staying on top of those communications that are coming through. But as you mentioned, we are available in the Laura Lee Blanton building. So the SMU main desk staff that will gladly greet any student or parent that comes in, and then reach out to us to further delve into whatever it is that we might need to be helping with.
Absolutely. Thanks, Robert.
Yeah, thank you.